Hello and welcome back. In the last video, we installed the Active Directory Domain Services role, and then we promoted DC01 to be a domain controller. Then we explored and we found the ntds.dit database file, and we saw some new tools that got installed. Now, when it comes to Active Directory, there are a few tools that we use to manage it. So first we have Active Directory, users and computers, and this is probably the most widely used tool for managing users, groups, computers, OUs, and basic permissions. We have the Active Directory Administrative Center, which is a modernized version of the users and computers. It has an advanced GUI, global search, recycle bin management, and it has fine-grained password policy support. We have Domains and Trusts, which is used to manage domain trust relationships, and it's used to view domain hierarchy in a multi-domain forest. We have Active Directory Sites and Services, and this is used for managing site replication, subnets, and domain controller placements in a distributed environment. We have the Group Policy Management Console, and this is a central console for creating, editing, linking, and managing group policy objects across the domain. And then we have DNS Manager that's used to manage DNS zones, records, name, resolution. It's critical for domain functionality. And when we install it, we also have a PowerShell module that gets installed with this as well. And this is very useful if you want to script things, if you want to automate Active Directory tasks like bulk user creation, group management, and query an object. This is great for that. And then you have something called an NTDS util, which is a command line utility, but it's very powerful. It's used for database maintenance, for metadata cleanup, and for seasoned FISMO roles in case if your primary domain controller goes down. And this is mostly used in disaster recovery scenarios. Now, for this video, we'll be using Active Directory users and computers the most, and we'll explore a bit of the Active Directory Administrative Center. Now, one concept that I want you all to understand is the idea behind a local user and a domain user. Now, local users are created on the local computer, which means this is stored in your hard drive. And you can only use this account to log into the computer where it exists. Usually when you go through the setup process on a new Windows device, the first account that gets created is added to your local administrators group on your computer. So that's why you're able to install software and make changes on your computer. Now, domain accounts, these exist on the ntds.dit database file on your domain controller. Now, this provides a centralized location for all of your domain accounts and gives you control over them. Now, by default, when you create these domain accounts, they don't come with any permissions or privileges. So if someone logs in to a domain computer using this account, they won't be able to install software or make any changes to the computer. And before we get started, let's lay out the task that I would like us to accomplish in this section. So first, we want to create our Active Directory structure. We want to create a user account for Bruce Clark and Rachel Beck. We want to add the bclark-pc and Rachel Beck-pc to the domain. We will create two security groups, one called share-operations and one called share-accounting. And we'll add Bruce to the share-operations security group, and we'll add Rachel to the shares-accounting security group. So with that, let's get started. Before we get into Active Directory, there is one change that I want to make. I'll log into Bruce Clark's PC and I'll do an ipconfig/all. And we can see that our DNS server is currently pointing to the IP address of the OPNsense router. Now, since we will be adding a lot of computers to the domain, we'll need to ensure that our DNS settings are pointing to DC01. Now, we could do this manually for every computer that we create, or we can configure our DHCP service to assign this out for us. So, in my web browser, I will navigate to http://172.20.20.254, which is the IP address of my OPNsense router. I'll sign in with the root username and the password is OPNsense. Now, first time that you log into this portal, you will be prompted to go through an initial setup. You could skip this, but I will do it. So first, we're asked about some general information. I'll leave the hostname as is, and I will enter prbinvestments.local for the domain. For the primary DNS, I will use 8.8.8.8, and the secondary will be 1.1.1.1. And then I'll click next. For the time server, since I'm in Canada, I'll Google what the time server is for Canada, and I will use that. I'll change the time zone to be America, Toronto. For the WAN interface, I'll leave everything as is and I'll click next. And for the LAN settings, I'll also leave everything as is and click next. Then I'll change the root password to be something more secure and then I'll click next and then reload, and that should be it. Now we could click on the dashboard to continue, or we could check for updates. I will always advise that you check for updates whenever you have a new installation. I will do this in the background because these updates do take a while. Next, under services, I'll expand it and I will click on ISC DHCP v4. Then I'll click on LAN. And this is where we could configure our settings for our DHCP service. And this is where we can configure our options for the DHCP service. So for the range, I will change the end range to be 172.20.20.100. For DNS, I will enter 172.20.20.20 and 172.20.20.21. Now 172.20.20.21 will be DC02 that I will be creating next. For the gateway, I will enter 172.20.20.254. And for the domain name and the domain search list, I will enter prbinvestments.local. Then I will scroll down and hit save. Then I will disable my network adapter and I will re-enable it. And we can see that our network is now called prbinvestments.local. Now, just so you know, you're not on the PRB Investments domain as yet. I just decided to name our network this so that it's just easier for us to identify when we're on this network. And after that, I will do another ipconfig /all, and we can see that our DNS servers is now 172.20.20.20 and 172.20.20.21, which is great. That means that we don't need to manually enter these IP addresses for all of our client machines. First, we are going to log into our domain controller. If you recall from our other video, after we installed Active Directory Domain Services, we have a few new applications that we can use. The one we will be spending a lot of our time in is Active Directory Users and Computers. So I'll go ahead and open that. First thing to know, these folders have specific names. They are called organizational units and containers. And if I click on the built-in OU, we have these objects called security group. These objects were created when we promote our DC01 to be a domain controller, and they are used to manage different privileges and permissions within your Active Directory domain. Our computers OU is empty. In domain controllers, we have one object, which is DC01. Then foreign security principals and manage service accounts are both empty. And in users, we have more objects. The important ones here is the administrator account and the security groups domain admin, enterprise admin, and schema admin. These are some of your most important security groups, so do not add just anyone that doesn't need access to these groups, even yourself. And we have a guest user, but notice there is a down arrow next to it. This signifies that it's disabled and cannot be used. I'll double click on the administrator user and we can view various options and settings that we could change. I'll click through the tabs and we can see there are different settings available to us. However, there is one tab that we're missing. So I will click on view, then I will click on advanced features. And you can see we now have a bit more organizational units available to us. I'll go back to the administrator user properties, and you could see we have this extra tab called the attribute editor. I'll click on that, and we have more options, and each option represents a value that we can modify for this user account. Now, modifying these values without knowing what you are doing can really damage these objects. So ensure when you're modifying these values, you know what you are doing and you understand what will happen if something goes wrong. What we want to do next is we want to build our Active Directory structure. Now, there are many different ways to do this, and there are many different structures that you can use. Usually, this will be based on how you want your Active Directory to be set up. For example, you can have a location-based OU, a department-based OU, or a hybrid-based OU. There are other examples out there, but these are the most common ones that you will see. So I will right-click on prbinvestments.local, and I will go to New and Organizational Unit, and we will name this OU prbinvestments.head office. And I will leave this option to protect the container from accidental deletion so I don't mouse slip and remove a very important section of Active Directory. I will then create 3 additional organizational units. I will create one for users, one for groups, and one for computers. And as I'm doing this, you could get an idea of how Active Directory structure works. It really just depends on how your company is structured. Because PRB Investments is so small, we don't really need anything major. or we don't need multiple organizational units to divide our offices and divide our location. We could just have this one OU, and below that we have our 3 OUs to separate our actual Active Directory objects. If we do expand in the future, we could always create these units later. We have our 3 OUs created, so now let's create our first user account. So I will right-click on the user's OU, and I will click on New, then Users. First name will be PRB and last name will be admin. For the user logon name, it will be PRB admin. And we have this option already filled out, which is at prbinvestments.local. So that will be our UPN, our user principal name. And below that, we have our user logon name, which is pre-Windows 2000, and that is PRB Investments /PRB admin. I will click next, and here I will create our password. We have options to either change password at next logon, user cannot change password, password never expires, and account is disabled. You could check these off if you need one of these options selected. I will uncheck the option that forces me to change my password at next logon because I don't need to change my password for this user. And I'll hit next and finish. I will then open the user properties, and you could see it's the exact same options we had for the administrator user. And what we want to do is go to the members of tab, and I'll click add, and I'm going to add this user to the domain admin security group. Now domain admin gives us administrative privileges throughout our domain, so we could perform certain actions that's not available for regular standard users. I could just type domain admin and check name, and you'll see that it will find it. I'll erase this, and next I'll just type in DOM, click check names, and it will find everything that begins with DOM. So I will just click on domain admins, click OK, and then OK once again, and then apply and OK. And with that, we've just added our PRB users to the domain admin security group. Next, I will create another user, and this user is going to be Bruce Clark. So the first name will be Bruce and the last name will be Clark. For the user logon name, there are many formats that you could use. It could be first name, last initial, last name, Bruce Clark as one word, or it could be Bruce.Clark. The one I will do is Bruce.Clark, but this depends on what your organization decides on. Decisions like these are usually up to the business, depends on what standard that they want. For me, we'll use Bruce.Clark and click next. I will leave the option checked for the user to change their password and next logon. I will create a password and click next and then finish. At the user properties and accounts, the option to change password at next logon is checked. So if you did miss this option at the initial user creation screen, you could make that change here. And for the account properties, there are a lot of options that we could change. I could set the logon hours for Bruce Clark, so I could disable his access during the weekends and maybe sometime on Monday. You can also set specific computers that Bruce Clark can log into. Active Directory users and computers is probably the more popular tool that we use when modifying objects in Active Directory. There is another one called Active Directory Administrative Center. This one is newer, but personally, I don't use it as much as I use the original Active Directory users and computers, but I will open it so we could explore it. Now, most of the functions that's available in users and computers is available here as well. We have a quick password reset option here. I just need to enter in my domain name, / the username, and I can enter the password that I want to change and perform the password reset. I can also perform a global search. I could search for Bruce Clark, hit enter, and it's going to find me the Bruce Clark's account. I could click on it and view Bruce Clark's account properties. Most of these overlap with what you could do in Active Directory users and computers. This window provides most fields that you would need all in one location. I'll scroll and you can see the many different options that we have. I'll return to PRB Investments, Head Office Organizational Unit, and I will click on New, and then I will click on Create a New User. And I will name this user John Smith. And the user login name will be John.Smith, and I'll create a password. And you could see this option allows us to change the location of the user. We don't have this option in Active Directory, Users and Computers. In Users and Computers, you could select the OU, but you can only do this after you've created the user. There are other options here as well that I could modify if needed, but that's all I want for now. We've created our John Smith user. Now, one of the things that's unique with this admin center that's not available in Users and Computers is the Recycle Bin option. Under Task, I have this option to enable Recycle Bin. This does not exist in Active Directory users and computers. This is unique to the Administrative Center, and I recommend that everyone enables this feature because it is very useful. I will click Enable Recycle Bin, And then I will say yes, that I do want to enable this. It's important to know that once you enable this, it cannot be disabled. So just so you know, this is an irreversible action. I will click on OK, and we will need to refresh the admin center. And now we have a new container object called deleted objects. Now this doesn't exist in users and computers. And I could close it and reopen users and computers to show you that it's not there. This only exists in the administrative center. If I go into deleted objects, it's currently empty. I will return to user, and I'm going to delete the John Smith user. I will say yes to confirm the deletion. And then I will go back into the deleted objects container, and you could see that the John Smith user is here. Before, if you didn't enable this feature and you deleted the user, there are ways to recover it, but it's not as easy as this option. This is just a much more convenient way to restore deleted objects. So John Smith is in deleted objects, and what we could do is just right click, and then we could select restore to, and we could select the OU that we want. And I will just select the user's OU and then click OK. So now we've just restored the deleted John Smith account to the user's OU. So the John Smith account has been restored, and now he's active once again. Next, I have two virtual machines, one called bclark-pc and one called arbeck-pc. These are two virtual machines that I've created for this demo. So what I'll do is I'll log in to the bclark PC, and I will log in as the local user bclark. I will enter in my password. And once I'm in, I will go to the command prompt and I will type in hostname. And you can see that the computer name is desktop with a random string of characters. Next, I will do an ipconfig to ensure that we're on the same network as our domain controller. And you need to ensure that the DNS server is able to resolve the domain. As you can see here, my DNS server is set to 172.20.20.20, which is the IP address of DC01, and also 172.20.20.21. This server doesn't exist as yet, but I will be creating the server soon. Those are the two requirements that you need. I'll ping dc-01.prbinvestments.local, and you can see that we get a reply. When you ping something and you do get a reply, it means that the systems could communicate with each other. It sends a small packet over to the domain controller. The domain controller gets it and sends back another small packet to say, yep, I got your message, we can talk to each other. I'm going to rename this PC. I will click on File Explorer. I will right click on this PC and go to Properties, and we have this option to rename this PC. And then I will click on Change. The computer name is going to be bclark-pc. I will click OK. I will say yes to restart my computer and then restart now. The computer has restarted and it's back up. I will log in once more, and I will open up command prompt, and I'll search for the host name once again, and we can see that the computer name has been changed. Next, we'll add it to the domain. I'll right click on the start menu. I'll go to System, and I will click on Rename this PC. Then I'll click on Change, and in the member of field, I will type in prbinvestments.local. Now when I do this, it's going to ask me for a username and password. Now the username and password that it wants is a credential that could authenticate you with the domain controller. Now when I log into this PC, I use bclark with a password. Now bclark exists on this machine specifically, so it has admin privileges only on this laptop. But if I try to use that here, I'll enter the credential and I will click OK. I will get the message that the username and password is incorrect because this user account does not exist on the domain. So back in Active Directory, where we created our two users, prbadmin and bclark, that is what it is looking for. So what we're going to do is we'll click on OK, and I will type in prbadmin with the password, and we could see that it says welcome to the prbinvestments.local domain, which means that it accepted the new password. And now we're on the domain, and we need to reboot for it to take full effect. And once it's back online, we see we have this option to log in as bclark, but below that we have this option to log in as other user. We'll click on this sign in option, and notice that it has this option here to sign into prb.local. So this means that our computer is on the domain. So I will log in with the bclark username and the password, and then I'll hit enter. And you could see that it comes back with incorrect username and password, and that is because the user bclark does not exist on the prbinvestments.local domain. So remember, when you're logging in, ensure you have an account that exists on the domain. I will type in bruce.clark, and then I will type in my password. And once I've done that, it will ask me to reset my password, which is a good sign. It means that it was authenticated. We'll click OK here once again, and then the old password will be pre-filled in already. We'll create a new password and we'll confirm it. And once we're done, we're going to click OK, and it will let us log into the system. We're now logged in as a domain user. And here's what we'll do next. I'll go to File Explorer, and then I'll go to the C drive and then the users folder. And we can see that we have two user profiles here. One is for B Clark, which is a local user, and one is for Bruce Clark, which is the domain user. So it will create a local profile for the user so that when they log in the next time, some information will be cached for the user. Now, we haven't configured any permissions or privileges for this user as yet. So let's open a web browser and download Google Chrome. After downloading, I will double-click on the installer to launch it. Now, you will receive a user account control prompt asking for username and password. So first, I'll try to enter my Bruce Clark domain credentials and will receive the message, the requested operation requires elevation, which means that Bruce Clark's domain account doesn't have the necessary permissions to install the software. To install the software, you need one of two types of permissions, local administrator rights on the machine or elevated privileges from the domain. Now, at the USC prompt, notice that we're logging in with the PRB Investments domain. Now, I could change this by typing in a dot and a backslash. Notice that it changes the domain that I'm now logging into. So instead of logging into PRB Investments, it's logging into bclark-bc. This means that it will search a local computer for a user credential. I'll enter bclark and the corresponding password. Now, this grants the necessary privileges to install the software because the local user bclark has admin rights. Now, I'll sign out and I'll sign in with the PRB admin domain account. I'm able to log into any domain account on any computer that's joined to the PRB Investments domain. Next, I'll right-click on the Start menu and I'll open up Computer Management. Under Local Users and Group, I'll click on Users, and here we can see several users, most of which are disabled, except for the bclark account. When I first set up this computer, bclark was the first default user account that it created, and Windows automatically adds the first user account to the local administrators group. Clicking on the bclark account and viewing member of, we can confirm that Bruce Clark is indeed a member of the administrators group. Now I'll go to groups and I'll open up the administrators group, and we have three members here. We have the bclark local account, and we have the domain security group PRB Investments /domain admins. This means that any user that is a member of the domain admins group in Active Directory is automatically a member of the administrators group on all domain joins computer. This grants them full local admin rights, which includes the ability to install software, run scripts, and make system-wide changes. That's why this group is so powerful and potentially dangerous if compromised. Let's add Bruce Clark's Active Directory account to the local administrators group manually. I'll click on Add, then Locations, and I'll change the location to bclark and then hit Find. And we can see these objects all exist on the bclark local machine. I'll change it from bclark back to PRB Investments.local, and I'll click Find now to list all domain accounts and groups. And you can see it found all of the objects that exist on the PRB Investments domain. I'll select the Bruce Clark domain account, click OK, and confirm once again, and Bruce Clark is now added as a member of the local administrators group. I'll click Apply, then OK, and reboot the system. Once the computer is back online, I'll log in using Bruce Clark's Active Directory account. I'll download Firefox and open the installer. This time, we get a USA prompt, but it doesn't ask for a credential. Instead, it simply asks, do you want this app to make changes to your device? Previously, without admin rights, we had to enter the credentials. But now that Bruce Clark is a member of the local administrators group, we can just click yes, and Firefox installs successfully. Okay, Now what I will do is head back to my domain controller, DC01, and I will log in with my administrator account. One thing to note here is that our computers OU is currently empty. However, there is another computers OU. This is the default container that automatically gets created by Active Directory during the setup process. If I click on it, we can see one PC is listed here. This PC was added when we joined Bruce Clark's computer to the domain. This process happens automatically. No additional steps are required. However, I don't want this computer to remain in the default computer's container. So I'll right click on the computer object, select move, and select the PRB investments.head office organizational unit, and then I'll choose the computers OU within it and click OK. Now we can see the computer object has been moved. Next, I want to create a user account for Rachel. I'll right click on the user's OU, go to new, and then choose user. I'll enter Rachel Beck's information and leave the option enabled for her to change the password at next logon. I'll enter a temporary password, click next, and finish. Next, I'll head back to Bruce Clark's PC, sign out, and log in using Rachel Beck's credentials. I'll be prompted to change the password. I'll click OK and create a new password and then log in. Now, so this was the same process that we did for Bruce Clark. Now, I want to show you guys something different. So what we'll do is we'll take a peek behind the curtains for a bit. So I'll go back to Server Manager and I'll open Group Policy Management. Now, Group Policy Management is used to manage domain-wide policies. And let me show you what I mean. I'll open it and I'll expand the Forest PRB investments.local, expand the domain node. I'll right-click on the default domain policy and choose Edit. This default policy contains rules and restrictions that gets applied across the entire domain. Some of these policies are helpful, while others might be limiting depending on your setup. The setting that I want to configure is under Computer Configurations, Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Account Policies, and Account Lockout Policies. There are 3 settings here. Currently, none of them are defined. First, I'll define the account lockout duration. I'll set it to 30 minutes, and once I do this, the system will suggest some default values for the other 2 settings. So it will set the account lockout threshold to be 5 times incorrect login, reset account lockout counter after 30 minutes. So this means if a user enters their passwords 5 times incorrectly, their account will be locked, and after 30 minutes, it will automatically unlock the account. I'll click on OK to apply these settings. Now I'll return to the Bruce Clark PC and I'll log in as Rachel. I'll log in 5 times incorrectly on purpose, and after the 5th attempt, we get the message the reference account is locked and may not be logged into. This can happen. Now this can happen for a multitude of reasons. Rachel maybe just resetted her password but forgot what a new one is and entered it 5 times incorrectly, and after 5 failed attempts, her account is now locked. To fix this, I'll return to Active Directory, Users and Computers, locate Rachel's account, refresh the view, and I'll see a message indicating that the account is locked. And to unlock it, I just need to check this box and then hit apply. Now, let's say that Rachel is out of the office and her account was locked unintentionally. As an extra precaution, we might decide to disable her account temporarily. So I'll right-click on Rachel's account and choose Disable Account. Back on her PC, when trying to log in, you get this message saying that the account has been disabled. Please see your system's administrator. Now later, if Rachel calls in and confirms that everything is fine, I'll go back into AD, I'll right-click in her account, and I'll choose Enable Account. I'll also reset her password and ensure the option for User Must Change Password at Next Logon is checked, and then I'll click OK and finish. Back at the logon screen at the Bruce Clark PC, Rachel will try to log in once again. This time she's prompted to create a new password. Now, I will try to reuse the same password she had before, but notice we get this error. Unable to update the password, the value provided does not meet the length, complexity, or history requirements of the domain. This happens because the password does not meet the domain's policy history requirement. That's part of the default domain policy we edit earlier. To proceed, Rachel will enter her old password and create a new unique password and then click OK. Now she's able to successfully log in. Alright, now let's go back into Active Directory, and what I'm going to do is open up Rachel Beck's account and fill out some of her user details. For the description, I'll enter CFO. For the office, I'll enter head office. For the address, I'll enter 145 Invest Street along with the city, state, and postal code. Under organization, I'll enter accounting as a department and the company will be set to PRB Investments. Next, I'll go to the member of tab and I'll add Rachel to two groups, the domain admins and schema admins. Now keep in mind, I'm just doing this for testing purposes. You should not assign random people to these powerful groups in any production environment. Once done, I'll click apply and then OK. Now, if I right click on Rachel's account and choose copy, I can use her profile as a template to create other accounts. So let's say we have another user called Ann Smith. I can enter in the details for Ann Smith along with the password and then click next and finish. If I open up Ann Smith's new account and look at the address tab, I can see that much of the info from Rachel has been copied over. Under organization, the department and company fields are pre-filled in, and under the member of tab, Ann is automatically added to the same groups that Rachel has been added to. Now, this is one way to manage your user accounts more effectively if you're frequently creating users. So you could consider building templates for different departments. For example, you could have an HR template, you could have an accounting template, or an IT template. However, one thing to note, these templates can include preset values for address, organization, group membership. Then creating a new user will be as simple as right-clicking and selecting copy. However, be cautious. This can lead to what is known as privilege creep. For example, if an HR user that has been with the company for 5 or more years and you copy their account for a new hire, that new employee may inherit access for confidential data that they shouldn't have. That is why a solid process and review mechanism should be in place. Next, let's create some security groups. I'll right-click on the group's OU and select new and then groups. And notice we have two settings, group scope and group type. Group type can be either security for access control or distribution for emails. Group scope includes domain local, global, and universal. We'll explore more of this when we're dealing with multi-domain forests and trust relationships. For now, we'll stick with the defaults, global and security. I'll name the first group shared as operation, and we'll create another one called shared as personnel. Next, I'll open up the group and we'll add Bruce Clark to the shared as operation and Rachel Beck to the shared as personnel. I'll go back to the members of tab for the shared as operations and we'll add it to the domain admins group. This means shared as operations is now part of domain admins, and since Bruce Clark is in the shared as operations, he now inherits domain rights via nested group. So let's test this out. Now back on Rachel's PC, I'll attempt to join the computer to the domain. I purposely won't rename the computer first. Let's assume this was an oversight by a new technician. When I tried to join the domain, I received the error, the domain could not be contacted. This highlights a key point. For a PC to join a domain, it must be in the same network as the domain controller, and it must have the correct DNS settings. When I check the IP config, I see that the machine is on a 10.10 network, which is incorrect, and the DNS is also misconfigured. So I will change this. So this is a VM setting. I'll change it from bridge to VMnet 10 that it should be on. But before I join it again, I want to change the DNS to show you one more point. So I'll change it to be 1.1.1.1. And we could see that we do have internet access, which is perfect. But now I'm going to try and join the domain one more time, and we could see that it still fails. And this is because DNS is critical when it comes to joining these computers to a domain. So ensure that your DNS server can resolve the domain controller's IP address. And once I change the DNS back to what it is, I will try to join the domain one more time, but this time I'm going to try and use Rachel's account to join it. So I'll enter Rachel's account, I'll hit join, and we could see that it works. Now, this is great that it works, but it does bring up a security concern. Any user, even one with no special privilege, can add a computer to a domain, and this opens up a few risks. A compromised or unauthorized machine could join the domain, and users might be able to bring in personal laptops and add them to the corporate network. Now, we'll address this later by restricting who can join devices to a domain. Now, back in Active Directory, I see that a newly joined computer has a generic name, which doesn't meet our naming convention. We want something identifiable like rbeck-pc. So on Rachel's PC, I'll log back in. Then I will go back to settings and rejoin this computer to the domain. Now, we get another UAC prompt that we didn't get when we joined the computer to the domain, because the account rbeck was already a local admin, and that account had the necessary privileges that was needed to add the computer to the domain. Rachel's domain account does not have the same privilege, so we need an account that does. I'll try Rachel's account just to see, and we do get an error that the requested operation requires elevation. Then we'll use Bruce Clark's domain account, and we can see that it did accept it. Now, this worked because Bruce Clark is a member of the Share Operations group that is a member of the Domain Admins group. And if you recall, being part of the Domain Admins group grants you privilege to make changes across the domain. So now I'll try to join this computer to the work group, and we'll call it work group. And you can see we have success. We do get a pop-up box letting us know that when we leave the domain, we need a local admin account to continue. I have my RBEC account that I'm able to use, so I'm okay with this. But if you're doing this in a production environment, ensure that you have a local admin account that you have access to, or else you can lock yourself out of the machine. Afterwards, we will need to reboot for it to take effect. Now back in Active Directory, in the computers OU, we have this computer object. It's currently disabled. Notice the down arrow. Next, I'll head back over to Rachel's PC, and I'll change our computer name to be RBEC, and then I will reboot. And now back in Active Directory again, I will create a new computer object. Under the new computers OU, I will right click and then select new, then computer. The computer name is going to be RBEC-PC in all caps. We have another option to specify a user or a group. The current default is domain admins. The user or group specified here will be able to join the computer to the domain. So only members that is a part of the domain admins group will be able to join the domain with this computer object. Then I'll click OK to create the computer object. Next, I'll head back to Rachel's PC. And I'll try to join the domain once again. First, I'll use Rachel's domain account, but notice that we get an error. An account with the same name exists in Active Directory. Now, if you recall, this did work last time, but the reason why it's not working now is because when we pre-staged the computer object, we specified that only domain admins can add this computer object to the domain. So I'll try Bruce's account, and we can see that it does indeed work. Because remember, Bruce is a member of the Share Operations security group that is a member of the domain's admin security group. So I'll reboot, and we'll head back into Active Directory. And you can see in the new computers OU, we have the RBEC PC added. Alright, now that Rachel's machine is joined to the domain with the correct name, let's go back and let's look at some search features for Active Directory. Now, I could right click and click on Find and start searching. So I could search for Bruce, and we see that it returns Bruce Clark. We'll search for R, and we'll see all options that begins with the letter R. We'll search for A, and it shows Ann Smith and PRB admin. And because we're searching for A, we can see that Ann Smith comes up because Ann begins with A, and because admin begins with A, so that's how that works. Next, if I try to search for Bruce Clark, and I look for the object, and I open the object, you'll see that it's kind of missing a tab. Now, if I close this, and I go to the users OU, and I open Bruce Clark from there, you'll see that we have the attribute editor tab here. And this is just good to know when you're searching for a user, and you need this tab. If you go through the Find window, you won't get that tab. You only get the tab if you go through the OUs and directly find the user and open it from there. Next, let's search for a computer object. So I'll try to search for Bruce Clark PC, and we'll see that it doesn't show up. And this is because I need to change the filter. Currently, the filter is set to user, groups, and contacts, so I will change this to be computers. So we'll change that, and then we'll try to search for computers. We'll see it comes back with Bruce Clark's computer. But if I try to search for Bruce Clark's username, it doesn't work. So very important, ensure that when you're searching for things, you use the correct filter for the correct object that you're searching for. And with that, we are done. I know this was a bit of a longer video, but I believe that it's important for us to see how things work and also what makes it not work. It's easy to just dive in and do everything right the first time, but that's not how real world works. We try, we get errors, and we resolve the errors. So I believe it's beneficial for us to see how things work and how things does not work. Now, if you remember from the last video, we were tasked with creating 3 user accounts, one for Bruce Clark, one for Rachel, and one for Philip. I only created 2 users, so there's still 1 remaining. I will task you to create the final user since you now know how to do it. So that is it for now. I will see you in the next video, so thank you for watching. If you find the information helpful, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel for future videos. Thank you.